Hello and welcome to the Society with Fatma Shaheen at PTB World. They say that children are the world's most valuable resource and every child deserves to grow up in a safe and nurturing environment. Now the question is that we living in Pakistan, do we allow them to do so as educators, as parents, as caregivers, as a community at large? And this is exactly something upon which we'll be shedding light in the course of today's conversation. We'll be talking about how child rights have evolved in the Pakistani society over a period of time. We'll be talking about various social evils which do exist and of course which do in one way or the other exploit children, be it those relating to their own self, be it those relating to cyberbullying, be it those relating for that matter even to their malnutrition, or in cases of girls mostly we observe for example the case of child marriage. Whereas we do have laws and policies overall to address more or less all of these issues, the question then is that do we see them implemented? Do we see that society's will for them to be implemented effectively? And in this regard, it's very important then to also equally delve upon the fact that the role of the media here becomes extremely important in not only raising awareness but also laying down the right and of course more empathetic perceptions of child rights and child protection as it does exist in the Pakistani society. So we'll be discussing child rights and of course the way they have evolved in the Pakistani society over a period of time, that too with a diverse panel. Let me introduce you to my today's panel. My first panelist for the show today is Dr. Naeem Zafar Saab, who's a child's rights expert. He's also the president of Pakistan's Pediatric Association Punjab. Assalamu alaikum, sir, and welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
You're most welcome, sir. Alongside him, I have Ms. Arooj Fatma, who's a social activist and she's also an analyst. Assalamu alaikum ji and welcome to the show.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for calling.
You're most welcome. And my third panelist for the show today is Ms. Fatma Ali, who's an educationist. Assalamu alaikum ji and welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
You're most welcome. So now to get the conversation started with you, when we do talk about child rights, we understand the fact that entire child rights movement is definitely a very historical and a monumental one. But when it comes to its application in our Pakistani society, what do you feel as a child rights expert are the most pressing issues when it comes to children's protection, when it comes to children's safety?
Fatma, when we talk of child rights, we are actually talking of four dimensions. The first one is survival. So the child has to be born. So the right to be born in a society and then to be raised. The health component comes in there, the birth registration comes in there,
Right,
and
sir.
the disease prevention comes in there. The second part is then the development. So the child has to be nurtured, to be developed, and that is where the education part comes in.
Right.
The third one is protection. So the child has to be protected from all kinds of evil and all kinds of assaults, all kinds of physical, social, economic exploitations and all kinds of thought.
Right.
And then finally, we also, which very few people talk about, is child participation. So the
Right.
children, according to their age, have to be involved in their own decisions.
Right.
So these are four areas of child rights that we are working on. But depending upon the need for all, there are obviously people working all around. We as pediatricians are more concerned about the health part as well as the nutrition part and the protection part.
Right. It's basically an amalgamation of so many things, and at the end of the day, sir, we do need that perfect collaboration between the different stakeholders because as you very rightly so said, this is a very pervasive problem, this is a very multi-dimensional problem and a very multifaceted issue too. Coming towards you, now we must talk about the most common misnomers or myths that we do come across regarding child rights in the country. So as a social worker yourself, as an educationist too, alongside that, what do you feel are the most annoying myths that you come across when it comes to child rights in Pakistan?
Okay, first of all, we will talk about, child physical abuse. There are certain myths going on, and not at the educational level, but also at the parental community.
Right.
In case, you come across any assault or any problem, are you, able to talk to your parents about it, or you talk to your educationists or your teachers about it? That's one thing. Second, we generally have idea that female children, they're generally subject to the violence, be it emotional, physical, or social. On the other hand, the fact is that boys are equally, or nowadays you know, they're more subject to such violence. It could be social, physical, or
That's very
emotional.
right, Arush, because a lot of times we see that children, especially boys, they are also subjected to violence. They are also
Yes.
subjected to abuse, but the patriarchy is something which then forces them to stay silent about it. But what about this notion that when it comes to child exploitation, when it comes to child abuse in whatever form it may so exist, it only emanates from certain quarters of the Pakistani society? I think that in itself is such a big misnomer in itself.
It's just because there are certain people who would like to talk about it. They have been aware that yes, they can come out and talk about it and there's going to be resolution. There are so many houses and households where children, they just do not have a voice to
Right.
speak about it, or even, you know, express if something, you know, has been happening in the house or has
Right.
happened in the house.
Right.
And not only that, you know, being a parent, I would say, yeah, I'm a mother of a son and a girl both. There was a time when, you know, parents used to be protective about only girls. But time has come that I do not only look at my daughter's protection. I also equally, you know, I have to be very careful about my son's protection when he's alone with another male person.
That's very rightly put by yourself, because when we do talk about prioritizing the safety of the girl child, this is something which we should equally ensure when it comes to the boy child too. On which I'll come to you, Ms. Fatma. Here we must take your narrative too, and in this regard, we must talk about the role of education when it comes to acting as both a protective as well as a preventive tool, so as to not only empower children but also to educate them about their rights. So in this regard, what role particularly do you feel can teachers like yourself play?
So you are absolutely right, because the child is spending more than half of the day with us in the school. We need to tell them that who are the important stakeholders they can go if anything bad happens. And then the most important thing is we need to tell them that who are the ones who will listen to them. It is very important for the child to know from the very beginning that their parents, their teachers and their loved ones, and who particularly those loved ones are, will be there for them and who is going to listen to them.
Right.
So the first and most important thing for me as a teacher is to develop that confidence and that positive relationship with the child, and guide them that who are those important people in their life who can help them out.
Right, Fatma, but do you not feel then that here, in addition to what you've said, it's equally important then that teachers like yourself, you actually also inculcate those skills in children so as to be open about abuse if they have been subjected to the same, because they would only be able to report something if they are confident enough to talk about it.
Exactly. For that, as we have already talked about creating establishing a positive relationship, we as teacher will be guiding them that who is the stranger, what is the good touch, what is the bad touch, and guiding them through awareness workshops and talking about that how they need to behave in a certain situation. But this thing needs to be done in a very in a way that does not, we need to consider the age appropriate
Right.
words. We need to tell them that how they have to behave in a certain situation. And when we will have those awareness workshops, for example, even for a playgroup child coming into school for the first time, we tell them that this is your teacher, this is that one person you can go and talk about, this is your mama, and this is your school principal, you can go and talk about anything.
Right.
So when you are telling them what is right and wrong in the classrooms by giving them practical examples which
It'll
are
make
according
things
to
easier
the,
for them.
yes,
So
it
basically, in
will-
a nutshell, then the manner in which it should be done should be, of course, sensitive. It should
Exactly.
be polite. It should be respectful too. On which, sir, I'll come to you. Here we also understand the fact that pediatricians and healthcare professionals like yourself, you are also vested with a very important responsibility. So typically, when any patient comes to you, their family, how do you counsel them? Because then I would like to believe that your job just doesn't extend to looking after the child, but also to counsel the family, because a lot of times we see that the child might be open about their concerns, about their safety, but the parents are the ones who are actually dismissing the same.
Once an abuse has happened, it is a matter of opening up. And usually, and in most of the cases, because we have handled more than 2,500 cases of child abuse and neglect in our child protection units, nobody comes out and says that they were abused. They are actually detected by the healthcare professionals,
Right.
including the doctors as well as the nurses. Nurses play a very important role here. So there comes the need of training of the doctors and of nurses, not only to know the early signs, early symptoms, but also how to interview a child, how to
Right.
work around with the child and with the family.
Right.
Because how we feel it, that the moment they know that some law enforcing agency is going to be involved, they just run away. So we try and inculcate confidence into them,
Right.
that we are a part of their family, we are with them, and we are going to work around.
Right.
And most of the times we try to do the four most important thing is to let the child know it was not their fault.
Right. That's so right, sir. And this is something that we also see happening with reference to women as well, because victim shaming and victim blaming is something, unfortunately, which is very rampant in our society. But moving on, sir, when it comes to the red flags, like what are the criteria that healthcare professionals like yourself use so as to be able to detect it, like practically, for the clarification of the audience?
I think most importantly, whenever a child or a family comes around with a child and seeks an attention very late. So if my child, God forbid, falls, I'm going to go to the hospital immediately.
Right.
Why should I wait for a day or two before going to the hospital? Then the things that they are telling about the child is probably is not ready to do those tasks for which they are told. For example, there's a toddler who cannot even run, and they say the child fell running. So these kind of discrepancies in their speech. Then probably what one family member is saying contradicts the other.
Right.
And also there are telltale signs on the patients, especially in context of the physical abuse.
Right.
The sexual abuse and emotional trauma do not leave any mark. So they come out with behavioral indicators.
Right.
So there are red flags in the behavior.
Right, sir. On which I'll come to you, Ms. Arooj. Here we must also talk about how abuse, exploitation, or even child neglect for that matter, that impacts not only the child but the families too. So in this regard, what would your viewpoint be?
Before I actually get to that question, I would like to actually break another myth, which is generally we have this perception that kids or children, they are abused by strangers. On the other hand, 95% of the kids, the reported cases, they were actually abused by someone they knew, they trusted,
Right.
somebody from the family member, some domestic help. So before they actually open up and talk about it, first we need to, being a family, we need to identify, we need to set certain rules that who can be close to our child and who cannot be close to our
Right.
child. That is a very, very important factor. We need to take it into account
So
while
basically, you
parenting.
propose that we should work on preventive measures. That is, of course, a point that, you know, very validly put by yourself. But when we talk about this whole issue, we understand that it is unfortunately surrounded by a lot of stigma. There are a lot of socio-cultural stereotypes which are very deeply embedded in the society, because of which even families who want to perhaps kind of be a little vocal about it, they might think twice so as to be able to do that. So in cases like these, when the problem is so deeply embedded in the society, when the issue is something which is so pervasively stigmatized, what can the solution be?
See, we need to raise a lot of social awareness through media, maybe. Our social media is already actively working. A lot of, women are already talking about it. There was a campaign which
There have
was,
been celebrities who've also been vocal about it.
they started certain campaigns as well. At a certain level, government has taken some steps where they have actually put certain bureaus where, you can actually
Child
report
Welfare
such
Protection Bureau.
Child Welfare Protection Bureau.
And the NCRC, the National Commission on the Rights of Child, is also very actively working. But in this regard, do you not feel then that the responsibility is something which should just not lie on the state completely? It is also something which should shift on the society, and here there should be collaborative
And it
arrangements
begins
so
from
that-
home,
Of
actually.
course, it begins at
Yes.
home, right?
And
so
from the
as
parents.
what do you propose should be done here? Because a lot of times, like something which Sir also earlier raised, we see that parents are the ones who actually are denying such accusations. So if we are to then educate and sensitize the parents, what is the most effective mechanism to do so?
First, we need to, make sure that parents are educated enough to understand that this is something which is going to have a lifetime impact on the child. If we do not understand that, they will never be vocal about it. They're going to snub it every now and then, every time this occurs. So that is the first step. We need to educate the parents, right from the beginning. Secondly, we need to make them understand that kids are our priority. They are the ones who are going to actually build up this nation
Right.
in the future. So in case something happens and then trauma stays with them, this is going to have a very negative impact generally, you know, on the society, because they're going to turn out maybe sociopaths.
Right, Ms. Arooj. And here, sir, I would want to have your viewpoint too, because we do understand the fact that if a child has been subjected to any kind of violence in their childhood, there is a very strong chance that when they tend to grow up, they actually commit the same acts of violence to people around them. So as a doctor, what would your viewpoint be on this issue?
Intergenerational cycle of abuse, I'll probably go a step further. There is a concept of adverse childhood experiences, and that has brought a change in the understanding of child abuse and neglect. The adverse childhood experiences are the experiences that the child experience while at home, and this is not just to his or her own self, but also at home. And this leads to, as an adult, their changes in behavior, changes in psychological makeup, changes in medical makeup, and which leads to not only delinquencies, not only to psychological problems, but also to medical problems, and you will be surprised, also cancer and infections.
That's
and
very
at the
strange.
end, a person loses about 10 years of life if there are adverse childhood experiences. That has been a study. And in the US, whenever we advocate it, $194 billion is lost because of these adverse childhood experiences. So these are extremely important things from the economic perspective as well as from the humanistic
Of course.
point.
Right, sir. On which I'll come to you, Fatma. Here we must also talk about the very important responsibility which is then vested on teachers like yourself so as to ensure children's safety in the school. So in this regard, we also understand the fact that there is a very pressing issue of child corporal punishment, which we have seen to be on a rampant rise, not only in Pakistan but world over. How do you propose can educators and teachers like yourself work to actually combat the same, that too with regards to having the right policies to that effect, that too with regards to having, you know, effective teacher trainings? So in this regard, is there some work being done?
So the thing is that once the schools that I know and I have worked in, the first and foremost thing we do is that there is a certain service rules which is being shared with the teachers, and it is very clearly mentioned that no such thing will be accepted at all from them.
Right.
And when it comes to the teacher training part, we teach them that how they can manage the behavior in the class, how they are going to deal with the children every day, because there are all types of children. We are focusing on differentiation and inclusivity in the classrooms, where we talk about that every child is individual and how they can personalize their learning experience for them.
But for this, do you not feel then the teachers themselves, they also need to be very emotionally intelligent, because you might be coming across different kinds of children with different kind of social needs?
And for that perspective, there is like the elite schools mostly, they have a very rigid and a scrutiny being done while you are hiring a teacher. We cannot hire someone just coming in and say, hi, I want to be a teacher and I want to work in your school.
You have to go through a proper process.
Yes, it is a proper process, and there is a complete background check being done where we see that whether this person is actually sound enough to come and teach to the child.
So, but coming towards you here, another issue that I would want to pinpoint towards is the child's health. And here we understand that child malnutrition is a very serious concern, and studies suggest the fact that over 42% of children in Pakistan are actually victims of stunted growth. So, sir, when it comes to tackling this issue of malnourishment of the child, how important is it to equally focus upon the mother's health too?
Stunting actually means that the child has not had good nutrition and has been subjected to various infections which have hampered their growth over a long period of time. Because otherwise the child will be wasted but not stunted. So the growth has not just reduced his weight, but over a large period of time, spanning years, his height has also decreased. The most important period for this for this stunting is 9 months before the child is born and 2 years after that.
So this is why I actually linked it with the mother's health.
That's exactly, that's extremely important, and I'm glad that you mentioned it, because a malnourished, an underage and a woman subjected to violence
Right.
will not give birth to a normal child. And that forms the basis of the newborn, and then the child is going to grow with that.
Right, sir.
So the maternal nutrition is extremely important, and that is why when we are working, we have to work for the woman right from her adolescent age,
Right.
because the girls get married very soon after adolescence,
Of course.
and many times even earlier. So working with that, and then especially working during the first 1000 days, 9 months before before birth and 2 years afterwards, because the stunting does not only mean the difference in height. The stunting actually means the retardation of brain growth.
Right. So in the long term, then it has an adverse impact not only on mental health, but if you were to look at it from an objective viewpoint, also perhaps your interpersonal relationships then.
Affects everything. I can the simile would be comparing it to a computer. So when the child is stunted and the brain is stunted, the hardware is small. From a small hardware, you can't run big programs.
Right.
So this child is liable to become a mistri, or let's say a clerk, but he's not going to become a scientist. So because for that creative thinking will not come, and that is extremely important in another aspect as well, the nurturing care. Because if the child is not nurtured, the attitudes, the psyche is also formed during these formative years. So that is where we need proper health, proper nutrition, and proper nurturing care of the child.
And also, sir, here, if I may add, community-based programs, because this is something that we do see happening all over the world. So why can we not have them here in our society? What would your viewpoint be on this particular issue? Because like sir very rightly so mentioned, that this at the end of the day is something which has to be a very collaborative and collective approach. When it comes to running these community-based reach programs, the focus of which should be focusing on both the parents' health as well as the children's health. Practically, how can they be executed in a country like ours?
If we talk about the practicality of such programs, first we need to understand that our own society is segregated into different social stratas. So in order to reach to each type of social strata, we need to have specialized programs which can actually address to their level, because each level have their own complications, they have their own limitations as well. So first we need to see if we are talking about really a strata which is
the
not
educated of the Pakistani society.
Yeah, less privileged, let's call them, and they're not well educated, less affluent, and they do not have access to good resources when it comes to education, when it comes to food, when it comes to infrastructure. So what kind of programs do we need to put in? Probably we need to have social workers where they can actually go into their houses, where women are not allowed to come outside. They can have a one-on-one talk session.
In addition to that, do you not feel then that, of course, when we talk about community-based reach programs, they in themselves are effective, but if we want to maximize the chances of success of any program, the training itself should start at a very basic and core level, and for that we go back to the schools. So when we talk about improving the curriculum so as to make it better reflective of changing times, what changes do you propose should be introduced in the school curriculum so as to make children more aware about themselves and about their rights too?
For this, we need to make sure that life skills based education is actually embedded in the curriculum right from the beginning. We need to understand that the kids are developing at different levels. They're developing physically, they're developing cognitively, they're developing emotionally, they're developing socially as well. So in order to inculcate life skills based education right at the very playgroup level, we need to ensure that they understand what are their rights, they understand how to positively adapt to certain behaviors when it comes to the real life, even when they're dealing with parents, even when they're dealing with their teachers, or even their peers. So this is something we need to bring it at a very, very grassroots level, right from the government schools.
That's very right. When we talk about these issues, they need to be embedded at a grassroots level. But then here, Fatma, I think your narrative becomes equally important too as an educationist. Do you not feel then that this should be something which should be continuous? It should be a continuous process. We need to have active monitoring mechanisms in place so as to ensure that with changing times, the school curriculum as it stands, that is also updated.
Absolutely. For that, I would say that if we consider the schools which are following international curriculum, there is a evaluation process through which after every 3 to 5 years the curriculum is being changed. We have seen that the past scenario, there was a new curriculum shared in the Punjab region where we were talking about those life skills, and we were trying to implement those 21st century skills where we were talking about the thinking skills, we were talking about the communication skills, we were talking about social
digital
skills.
citizenship, which is extremely
Yes.
important in the world that we live
Exactly.
in today.
Because
basically.
yes, because the child, it's a 21st century child, and we cannot ignore the fact that everything digital is just a click away for them.
Right.
So we need to ensure that we are developing or providing opportunities to a child who is actually digitally literate.
Right.
So they should have that media and information literacy well enough that they should know that anything on social media cannot be true.
Of
They
course. There is so much room for fake news, for misinformation, for
Exactly.
disinformation. Now, this brings me to a very important part of today's discussion, which is that we understand the fact that social media at one end has, of course, given people that access to educate themselves, children even for that matter, and to actually fully utilize their right to access to information. Do you not feel at the same time it has also exposed others to harmful content? So, where do you draw that line, both as educators and as parents and caregivers?
Okay, so as we all know that digital literacy is very much important. We need to, when I'm talking about as some from the school perspective or from an educator perspective, we need to have, and we are still working on this area where we are developing and guiding students that what is internet safety, how they have to behave in the digital world, what is the impact of their digital footprint, how they need to behave and respond to the strangers they are communicating with. Like in the schools, we all have access to the internet, we have computer labs. It's the schools the schools need to decide and guide the teachers and the parents and even the students that these are the sites which are actually available for the student where they can research on.
That's very right, but you see, at the end of the day, regardless of people guiding, regardless of people actually counseling others, do you not feel at a very core level that we need very strict policies to that effect? And this is something, sir, that we do see all over the world too. There have been countries who've actually passed laws saying that you cannot use your phone while you're in the school premises. And that in itself is something which is very good, because then you're ensuring that when the child is there on the school premises, they are only there to study. But sir, moving on, when we talk about the role of the media in this regard, here media literacy is extremely crucial. The narrative that the media sets, the image that the media gives, that in itself shapes a lot of public perceptions and of course children and young people's perceptions too. So how do you see the role of Pakistani media evolving over a period of time with regards to upholding child rights?
At least 2 decades. When we started off somewhere at the turn of the century, nobody was ready to listen about it. The media was really, they didn't know what were they supposed to present. And actually, at that moment in time, whatever we were talking, it seemed as we were talking to blank walls. Times have changed.
Right.
There have been bad things, but I must admit there have been good things as well. We have had TV serials, we have had movies, we have had talk shows, and especially the talk show that we are doing right now. And we have been having these discussions, healthy discussions, in almost all media centers, that we are talking about safeguarding of children, we are talking about child abuse, we are talking about system development, we are now talking about child safety.
Right.
So this is an extremely positive thing. But on the other hand, unfortunately, we lag far behind because the media is moving so fast ahead, especially the social media. When I was conducting my research on child sexual abuse and on pornography, we were talking about just about 10 years ago, we were talking about internet cafes. Now it's in their palms. So we have to be abreast of the latest knowledge. We have to know how to tackle with our children. And the most important thing is we have to give them confidence that they can get the best out of it and how they can abstain from going to the wrong places.
Right, so your point is noted, on which I'll come to you, Ms. Arooj. Here we must talk about this with regards to the digital world that we do live in. So in this regard, when it comes to media reporting on such issues, how do you feel can media strike that balance between reporting on these issues in a fair and accurate manner, but do it in a way which doesn't hurt the dignity or the privacy of the child involved?
Again, we have different sorts of media. We have social media, then we have digital media, you know, and then we have print media. All three types of media are available. Right now, the most commonly used is the social media and the digital media. When it comes to social media, so for that we need to bring in some awareness. Just like, you know, Ms. Fatma said, that we make sure the students are aware that how do they need to behave in a certain environment, be it digital environment. So that's a certain level of education is to be given at the school level as well as at, you know, at the parental level.
And also to the media persons too, you see, because they are the ones who are actually setting the narratives, they are the ones who are actually reporting, and they are the ones who are actually circulating the news. So again, that's a collaborative effort. But when we talk about this with regards to, we see this, since you very rightly so mentioned the fact, a lot of information now comes in from modern technology, from internet usage, and of course from social media. Here, do you not feel then that a lot of responsibility also lies on social media influencers and bloggers, so to speak, who would be, you know, perhaps prefer talking about lifestyle and fashion issues, but might not give issues like these much importance?
You know, a lot of new influencers are coming up now, right? Very young ones who do not know what is right and what is wrong. They'll just see a content and they'll reproduce it, or probably, you know, they'll add some creativity to it without knowing the fact that it can have a harmful impact on the society at large. So first we need to have check and balances at the media level, whether they should be allowed or not, because our kids are so prone to such devices, you know, just like
and they're also very prone to following all the social media influencers.
And they get influenced by them as well. You know, one dance comes up on the internet and becomes an internet sensation, and, you know, the other day your child will start doing the same thing. So which is not a very, you know, positive impact on the child mental well-being. So being a parent, first you need to watch that what are the devices and what are the mediums your child is exposed to.
Right.
You need to, you know, keep proper checks and balances. And then when we talk about media, we also probably need to bring in some national policy or something like that.
Right, Arooj. So I understand that there is work being done on this proposed national policy. So tell us more about it.
Child protection policy is coming up. We have been working on it for decades now. In fact, the first one came up in 2007, the National Policy and Plan of Action. Unfortunately, because of devolution, it didn't work. Since then, every province is developing it. It has been developed in Sindh, it has been developed in some part in Balochistan, in Gilgit-Baltistan. Punjab lagged behind. But now the policy is in circulation right now, and as far as I have learned, that it is going to be implemented, hopefully, soon than late.
On which I'll come to you, Fatma. Here we must talk about the fact of something which Sir also very rightly so mentioned, about the policy which is in the making, the laws which we already have with regards to addressing various child right violations, be it with regards to child abuse, be it with regards to child marriage, and so many other issues that we have talked about. But when it comes to implementing the same, how particularly do you feel can the societal mindset be changed in this regard? Because laws on paper, they don't have any value until and unless they are actually implemented by the society.
So I'll be talking with respect to what role can schools or educators can play when it comes to implementing this policy in our country. The first and foremost thing is that we need to have collaborative efforts coming in from someone from the government coming in for the regular check-ins and seeing whether the policy is being implemented or not. Most of the private schools, because they are following the international curriculum, there are certain rules and regulations because of which there is an in-house child protection policy already being implemented.
Right.
But the thing is, we need to see that either we as schools are taking a reactive approach towards it or a more proactive approach. So
even a preemptive approach would help, because then you see you are approaching something with foresight then, and you know what perhaps might be coming. And this is something, sir, which you are also particularly talked about earlier on, that prevention is of course better than cure.
Exactly. So having those awareness sessions with parents is very important. Maybe like in the schools which are catering to upper middle class, or the class where the parents are already into literate, they know how to deal with the digital gadgets and everything. But most of the Pakistani parents that we have are not digitally literate. So we need to tell them that and guide them and make up a mechanism where we are spreading awareness for them, that how, like, just giving them a gadget to the child so that they can make certain videos or so, this is not right.
Right, madam, your point is noted. On which, sir, I'll come to you, and before we conclude today's show, so to wrap up today's discussion, what would your proposals be with regards to making child protection and child well-being a priority, and of course a reality in the country too? What are the changes that we need to introduce, not only at the policy level, substantive policy I'm referring to, but also at an institutional level, and then largely speaking at a social level too?
I think you have already alluded to it before. Prevention is better than cure. So most of our effort has to go on prevention. And the prevention comes through proper parenting. So we need to have good parenting courses, parenting classes, parents awareness first, before we go about doing anything else. On the other hand, then proper systems of care for the mother and for the child to upbring their best behaviors, best psyche, because and providing them with alternates.
Right.
We do not have playgrounds. We do not have healthy choices for the lifestyle choices for the children. So we need to develop those. These are the things which are going to reduce the burden of child abuse and neglect. So, and then obviously the policies are there to detect these things early, to support these children and their families, and to prevent harm. So that should be the policy.
Right.
That's
but sir, the policies, of course, we need to ensure that they are implemented, basically.
Of course.
Right. Coming towards you, here we must talk about this from a gender lens too. Now we understand that a very pervasive problem in the society is also early and forced marriages and child marriages, something which sir rightly so mentioned too. Here we need to change the societal mindset. Here we need to ensure that those typical social norms which perpetuate gender inequality, those are done away with. So here, who is the one who should take responsibility? Should the responsibility just then fall on media? Should it also transcend to parents, to caregivers, or is it something which should be equally shared by the whole society?
Actually, the society lies on everybody, from parents to schools to community to the society, and even small family setups. We need to make sure the only solution to all of these problems is to educate, bring awareness at every level, at parents level, at media level, at the children level, at the school level, at the community level, at every level. We need to make sure that whatever we are creating, whatever we are communicating to each and every community, each and every aspect of their life, we need to make sure that they understand that why children are so important, and how their growth, their mental, emotional, social and cognitive and physical growth is so important for for them to become a productive member of the society in the future.
And give back to the society.
And give back to the society.
And here I believe the role of community leaders, the role of religious leaders, that becomes very important too, especially when it comes to tackling all those socio-cultural norms. Sir, you would agree with me here? Because you see, when it comes to addressing all these issues, more particularly in the remote areas of the country, here people like these, they have a very strong influence.
Absolutely. Absolutely. At the clergy level, again, it comes back to power. So what we really need to do, we need to make them understand, we need to make them, we need to educate them, we need to have them or give them that sense of responsibility that they can actually make a difference in the society. And how can they do it is through positive reinforcement of the behaviors, positive reinforcement of certain norms and cultures. And then not accepting certain things which are not even allowed by Islam.
Right.
So we need to actually go back to the roots. We need to actually study what Islam says. We actually need to study what our society calls for it. We actually need to see what the education tells us.
Right. Right, Arooj, your point is noted. On which I'll come to you, Ms. Fatma, and before we conclude today's show here, it's equally important then to also talk about the rehabilitation of survivors of violence. In this regard, what responsibility then lies on education institutions and teachers like yourself so as to ensure that this whole process is a smooth one?
For that, three things are very important when it comes to the school. Number one is the curriculum. Number two is the instruction, that what instructional techniques or pedagogies the teacher will be implementing. And number three is the data.
Right.
So, with data, it can be what is the child's background, data how the child is performing now,
Right.
data that when the interventions or support is being given to the child, how they are performing, so before and after. So the curriculum, maybe we need to modify the curriculum, maybe we need to provide individual or personalized attention to the child. So whatever those things are, these are the three aspects which we will be focusing on. And the most important thing, all these three things are connected with a teacher who demonstrate empathy.
Right.
If the teacher is not emotionally intelligent, if the teacher is not available, if the teacher is not willing to make a difference in the child's life, we cannot create or make a difference in that child's personality.
So the focus then again comes
Goes to
on
the-
educators like
Yes.
yourself, on which note I would like to conclude today's show. Thank you so much, Dr. Saab. Thank you so much, Ms. Arooj. And thank you so much, Ms. Fatma, for your time today. Well, to conclude today's show, we generally spoke about the ever-evolving status of child rights as it does exist in the Pakistani society. In this regard, one positive development which we do see emerging over time is the fact that we generally see children being more vocal about their protection and safety. In this regard, it's equally important then for their parents and of course the caregivers to not only to listen to them but to amplify their voices and to very categorically challenge the biases which do unfortunately exist and surround child rights as they do exist in the Pakistani society. In this regard, it's then equally important not only to understand the fact that ensuring our children's safety and their protection is of course just not merely our legal or moral obligation. It is definitely something which we definitely owe to the future generations too. On that note, signing off for today. Until next time, take care and Allah Hafiz.